Good morning, everybody. Today I have got a little short video all about me testing my candles. We all know that we need to test them, as annoying as it is. And as you can see, I actually make my own candles. I used a product called Hydrostone, and then of course I use some pigments as well, and I get those from the UK. So here's just a few examples before we get going. Now, the main thing with this is not one wick will fit all. Every fragrance can change how it's all going to work, and of course the jars change it because every jar is a different size. So one wick does not fit all, so that means a lot of testing. Testing something nobody loves doing, but you just have to do it whether we love it or not. You just have to do it. So my thing is either try and use one of the same jars. If you're using glass, usually you can remove the wax after, and give it a good burn, because not everybody burns a candle for only 2 or 3 hours. Lots of people will leave it on for hours, no matter what you leave on the bottom of the label. So it's important to make sure that we're doing everything we need to do. So here, of course, there's lots of different wicks. I've always got so many. I do use these wick stickers. I get those from Pure Candles, and all of my wicks I actually get from Pure Candles. Sometimes I use Aussie Candles as well, but for now we're using Pure Candles. Now, these gorgeous little tabs that you can see here, these are wick centering tools. And honestly, it's game changer. I mean, you need these. These are from Quick Wicks. I'll leave their link down below. So they are really, really good. I really love them. And, for these particular candles that we're doing today, I really wanted to have a double wick. It doesn't need a double wick. I do have them and I sell them with one wick, but I just thought it looked really nice with two. But 2 wicks means that the jar's going to heat up extra. And, we've got to make sure it doesn't heat up too much. So that's why we're looking at, which wick we need to do today. So I'm going to do some testing. First, I'm going to be starting with the Pure Candles number 4s, I think they're called. If I forget the name, I'll write them down the bottom. And if the 4 doesn't work, then of course we are up to the next stage. So here I do have my beautiful jars. As you can see, I've already wicked them with 2 number 4s, and I have used the number 5 wick centering tool on these particular ones. Also the jars, I get the molds from Lee Molds in Australia. I will also leave the links for Lee Molds. I'll leave the links, like I said, for Quick Wicks and also for Pure Candle supplies for the wicks that I'm going to be using. So these centering tools really do help. Like, honestly, they help. I mean, we just can't eyeball it good enough. So basically, if you see the bottom, that is actually the tool you put in first. You just slide that in. That helps you to put the wick in the right place. And then the piece that we're going to put on the top, that's going to hold the wick so that it's centered, because if it's not centered, it will mean that it's going to burn more on one side, which is not very good at all. I mean, we definitely don't want it burning on one side, because the jar will get too hot on one side. So that's the main thing that we need to think about. And of course, we want it centered because it looks more attractive, it burns better. I mean, there's just so many things. Like I said, the heat of the jar and so on. And also, when you're testing your jar, what is actually super important? To actually use like one of those infrared thermometers, and just, use your thermometer to tap the side of the jar, because we want to see how hot the jar's getting. If the jar is getting too hot, it means that candle, usually the wick, is just too much for the jar, because jars can explode when they get too hot. So it's really important not to do that. Now, here you can see I've got some wax. I'm just mixing it up. I generally use a coconut soy wax. I get that from Pure Candles as well. It is one of those waxes that you need your temperatures to be exact, and then you will get a really beautiful candle. Also, one thing I have to say is when you're using soy candles, it's quite different to using a paraffin. I mean, soy waxes, they're just one of those waxes that takes so much time to get perfect. And no matter how much you try it, sometimes you are going to get, a top that doesn't look exact. you might actually get like a little ring around the outside of a discolorant, and that usually means it's because of the vanilla. But, you know, if you go to a shop and you see a super shiny candle, it usually means it has a portion of paraffin in it. I don't use paraffins. There's nothing wrong with them. A lot of people use them and really like them. Some people use 10% paraffin, and that really can help a lot of discoloration. But there's also UV stabilizers and other things that you can put in your candle just to make them a little bit, you know, beautiful, and really just sort of stop a lot of that discoloration. But it's all about learning, isn't it? So like I said, you know, we're going to wait for the wax just to cool down. Then we're going to put it in this one. And then what I'm going to do is just leave it, because I actually want to just leave it to it. Obviously, you know, I'll leave it for a day or something, or maybe even to the afternoon, because this is just a tester. You obviously want the wax to be super hard. You don't want it soft, otherwise it's not going to show a true burn. So, like I said, you know, we will wait for the wax to be ready. We're going to pour that into the mold, and then what we want to do is we want to light it. Now, when you're doing testing, the most important thing is testing your time. So if you start at 10 a.m., I would write on your sheet or your paper, however you're recording it, starting at 10 a.m., check how it's going an hour later, 2 hours later, 3 hours later. Now, if you get a full burn within 1 hour, that means that wick is too big. It's really important just to note that the wick may be too big. So anyway, we've done it all in the jar. Here I am having my coffee and just seeing how it's going. So we are literally just going to let it do its little thing. Now look, it did get a full melt pool, but that was within 40 minutes. So these wicks are way too big. I need to go down. So I'm going to try a 3 or a 3.5. We will see how that goes. So you really, to be honest, if it takes 2 hours or so to get a full melt pool or more, that's probably good. You really don't want it less than that, because if it's less than that, it just means that the wicks are too big. And you can see these wicks are quite big. There's nothing wrong with a big wick, I guess, or a wick that's a tiny bit big. But, you know, once they're big and they're dancing and moving, it usually means that they're just too big and we need to wick down. And this jar was quite hot. So I knew within an hour, one side of the jar felt quite warm. And I thought, no, we need to actually wick down. This is no good for this particular jar. Thank you for watching, friends. I will see you on the next video. Bye for now.